Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about preparing your documents for professional review, and by that we're talking about the key documents for a standard review. So we're talking about the report and the summary of what's going to be in your presentation. So people often build this up to be something that it doesn't need to be. It shouldn't take you weeks to produce. If you've got the necessary experience, it can be prepared really quite quickly. For the routes where you don't need to demonstrate academic equivalence in your professional review report, in effect it's an expanded CV. The report does need to be well referenced to the competencies though, for the grade that you're applying for, but you'd expect that to be the case. You must make sure that you've got all of the areas covered. As you progress through structured training with a mentor, that probably won't be a problem, or if you're at the end of a piece of experience and just reflecting back on it and producing the documents, then you're going to check with a mentor and you're going to do that in the same way. It goes without saying you must make sure that your report actually says what you think it said. There's a danger that we fill in the gaps in our minds, don't we, when we produce something, and a mentor can help there too. You don't want the scrutineers and assessors having to read between the lines with what you've submitted, and particularly when you've got your presentation summary, when you go on to deliver that presentation, you want to make sure that the summary reflects what you're actually going to talk about. Another good piece of advice is don't try and impress the assessors for the sake of doing that, and there's a real danger that people try to do that. Now, if you don't have the experience and you've just included something because you think it looks good, you're trying to impress the people that are going to be making the assessment, they'll recognise that. It's much better to be honest. Also, make sure that you've got a good mix of technical and soft skills. And think laterally when you've got a gap there. Some people, scientists and engineers, they do have a gap in soft skills, and you can look outside of what you do in the workplace and maybe address the gap in that way. Just before we close, I want to talk a little bit about AI, and we know that scientists and engineers are often naturally more numerate than literate, and possibly you might be putting your submission together in English, and that could be your second language. The general rule of thumb is, the assessors are human. They're not expecting the documentation to be perfect, so using spelling and grammar checks, just the standard spelling and grammar checks are fine, and just make sure that then once you've done that, a review is carried out by your mentor or sponsor. We need to accept, obviously, that AI is here to stay, and of course there's good AI and bad AI, but the assessors at the end of the day, they want to see your work, and through the checks that we carry out, it will be obvious that the submission is not your work if it's been produced by AI, so avoid doing it.